10 plagues, 10 supernatural disasters unleashed on the most powerful civilization in the ancient world. Water turned to blood, frogs, lice, flies. Disease killing the livestock. Boils breaking out on every Egyptian. A hailstorm unlike anything seen before. Locusts devouring everything the hail left behind. 3 days of total darkness. And finally, the most devastating of all, the death of every firstborn in Egypt. The plagues of Egypt are one of the most dramatic sequences in all of ancient literature. But here's the question that has fascinated historians, scientists, and biblical scholars for generations. Did they actually happen? And if they did, what caused them? Let's start with what we know about ancient Egypt during the period most scholars associate with the Exodus. Around 1600 to 1500 BC, Egypt was experiencing significant environmental and political instability. We know from Egyptian records that this period coincided with the eruption of Thera, a massive volcanic explosion on the Greek island of Santorini. Some researchers believe this was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history. And here is where the story gets extraordinary. A team of researchers, including scientists from the University of Chicago and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, proposed something remarkable. All 10 plagues may have been connected, not independent supernatural events, but a single chain reaction triggered by one catastrophic natural event. Starting with the Nile, the first plague, water turning to blood. Researchers believe this may have been caused by a massive bloom of burgundy blood algae, a toxic red microorganism that thrives in warm, slow-moving water. Volcanic activity upstream could have disrupted the Nile's ecosystem, triggering exactly this kind of bloom. The algae would have turned the water red, made it toxic and undrinkable, and killed the fish. Now, what happens when the fish die? The frogs leave the water. The second plague, frogs. Millions of frogs driven out of the toxic Nile and onto the land, but frogs driven onto dry land die quickly. And what happens when millions of frogs die on dry land? The insect population explodes. Plague 3, lice. Plague 4, flies. Massive swarms of insects feeding on the dead frogs. But it doesn't stop there. Those insects, carrying disease, then infect the livestock. Plague 5, disease killing the cattle. And insects carrying disease don't just infect animals, they infect people too. Plague 6, boils breaking out on Egyptians and their animals. Now we get to the weather plagues. Researchers have connected the volcanic eruption of Thera to dramatic climate disruption across the eastern Mediterranean. Volcanic ash in the upper atmosphere can cause severe weather anomalies. Plague 7, catastrophic hail. Plague 8, locusts. Swarms of locusts are driven by weather systems. Disrupted wind patterns from volcanic activity could have driven locust swarms directly into Egypt. And then, Plague 9, 3 days of total darkness. A volcanic eruption the size of Thera would have ejected enough ash and debris into the atmosphere to block sunlight, not for a moment, for days. Egyptian records from this period actually describe unusual darkness. And then the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. This one is harder to connect to a natural chain reaction, but some researchers have proposed that toxic mycotoxins produced by the fungi growing on grain supplies contaminated by the locusts and climate disruption could have accumulated in grain stores. In ancient Egypt, the firstborn son had privileged access to the best food in the household, including the grain stores. If those stores were contaminated, the firstborn would have been the most exposed, the most vulnerable. Now, does this natural explanation make the plagues less significant? That depends entirely on how you read them. For many believers, the question of whether God used natural mechanisms to accomplish divine purposes doesn't diminish the miracle at all. The miracle isn't just the event, it's the timing. 10 catastrophic events arriving in sequence, on demand, stopping precisely when Pharaoh relented, starting again when he changed his mind. Whether you read the plagues as literal supernatural intervention, as a dramatic account of real natural disasters, or as powerful theological narrative, the Exodus story changed the course of human history. And the debate about what really happened in ancient Egypt is far from over. There is one more layer to this story that most people never hear. Egyptian records from this period are remarkably silent about the Exodus. No mention of Moses, no record of 10 plagues devastating the country, no account of a massive enslaved population leaving. Why would Egypt leave out one of the most catastrophic events in its history? The answer to that question tells us a great deal about how ancient empires recorded and didn't record their failures. We're going to dig into that in a future episode. Subscribe to Before the Sermon so you don't miss it.